Welcome back to The Line. Albuquerque voters have the opportunity to select new school board members next week. There are several people running for each seat that's up for election this year. And Janice, I have a simple question. We have 21 in total. We alternate districts, of course, and so we have a thing going there. We've got 5 candidates in District 3, 4 in District 5, 6 in District 6, and 4 in District 7.
Partridge in a pear tree.
Right. It's amazing. What do you attribute all this activity to? Is there a common thread you can see here?
Oh, you bet. You bet. First off, APS and schools in general in New Mexico are not progressing. And there is the news media make sure that we know that we are, what are we, 51st? 50.
51st out of 50.
and so
Seems like
that is very, parents really do not like that.
Right.
But then there is the subtext at APS of a board and an administration that is dysfunctional, and a board whose policies has continued to eliminate participation by the parents. And they don't like it.
Interesting.
They don't like it.
That's always a rumble. Eric, pick up on that if you would. I mean, again, I have to throw in, we truly don't turn out for school board votes. But to Janice's point, there's something in the air, isn't there?
With 21
about
candidates,
this?
there'll be a turnout.
That's true too. Family and friends. Exactly.
I'm not sure. I have a kid in public school, and I'm not sure that it's about suddenly this groundswell of APS is a disaster, because APS has been struggling for a while, right? And we've had some bigger scandals in the past. I think it's really the bigger picture. I think people nationally have been so awakened by what's been going on. And actually, there's a lot of groups on all sides of the political spectrum saying you need to get involved and you need to run, or you need to get somebody to run. So you have a bunch of political newcomers. Many of them come out of sort of, there's a few Bernie-crats running. I know there's the governors, I had apparently working with a few of these candidates to try to, so there's this a whole bigger strategy. There's the APS problems that are always there. You're going to have a few of these folks who are parents, and that's why they're running, or they're. But I think most of these folks have been either recruited or stepped up because they're very, very troubled by what's going on, and this is a good opportunity for them to get involved. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a
great thing.
Yeah, Sophie, picking up on Eric's point, I'm wondering if the ascension of Stephen Michael Quezada from school board to county commission
in some ways
is pointing for folks, right?
I think actually that when you look at what I think, for instance, the Republicans have been extremely good at doing over the last couple of decades, is starting on the school board, moving up to higher office, building that bench intentionally.
Right.
It seems to me that was a very good strategy, and Democrats have done less of that, I think, and are getting better about it. The other thing I think that's happening, though, and I see this on social media quite a bit, is that the culture wars have really hit Albuquerque schools. So we have, there's a candidate who is either Tea Party or Tea Party affiliated in every one of these open races. And that has really galvanized the left. We can't allow, what we're hearing is we can't allow our schools to step back on protection for trans and gay and lesbian students. We can't allow movement away from teaching of evolution and other sciences in our schools. And so in some ways, I think that the effectiveness of the right in putting forward candidates who probably stand a decent chance has helped to galvanize the left. The problem for the left is, as often happens, they've got 3 Democrats, 4 Democrats running for each race, and voters are going to have to educate themselves. If they wish to defeat a Tea Party candidate, they're going to have to educate themselves on which of those candidates is most likely to be able to take the seat. So there are voter guides. There is information out there about that. But I think what we're seeing here is that pushing on the cultural issues and how they impact.
Interesting
I have
point
to
there.
just make one correction.
Please.
I now know all of these candidates, and there is only one candidate that has any relationship to the Tea Party.
Okay.
There's a candidate whose campaign manager is Tea Party affiliated, and there's another one, I'm forgetting which one it is.
I'm just telling you, they're not. Actually, there is a church that actually went out and recruited candidates.
Interesting.
But not Tea Party.
So
So to say that they're Tea Party, that's like saying you're a communist. I know what you're saying, but it's not the case.
Let me throw this. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I just want to your point about why there's so many people. And I think Sophie raises a great point, and everybody at the table did. Is that I think that the schools are becoming sort of a battleground, right? I mean, it used to be you ran for the school board because you wanted to fire a coach, you wanted to change this, you wanted to change that. You know, now there's just so much going on in the schools, getting so much attention, and the schools are getting more and more authority and power. I mean, the legislature is, you know, over the course of time, it's really just fund a chunk of money to a school district, let them send it out the way they want to. And schools are running to the fore. You know, for when I was in high school, you know, even though I went to a really small town, conservative town, you know, today, schools are really at the forefront of issues now, right? I mean, like the transgender issue. When I was in high school, schools wouldn't have touched that.
Right.
They would have run from that, and they would have just said, you know, let's be late to the story. Now, in today's society, I think, and a lot of it has to do with kids, are pushing some of these issues, and they're at the forefront of these issues that I think it's really energized both sides to say, you know what, we really can make a difference there.
Right.
And also I think at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's still one of the cheapest seats to run for and still get
That's right.
a bully pulpit.
You can run it
from
off
which
your
to do
kitchen
something.
table, and
Right.
exactly right. Eric, however, we've had situations. If you were going to be winning one of these races, what are you walking into here? We've got a brand new superintendent. She's still getting her feet under her. We've got the potential that's out there of breaking up the district now into 2 separate districts. It's something feels like these folks are walking into a lot of big-time decisions. How do we know who's ready for these things? That's always the mystery to me about school board members. What do you have to bring to the table to manage something that enormous like breaking up a school district? It's huge.
Well, that's the irony of, you know, we've one of the largest school districts in the country. You know, 90,000 plus kids, 20,000 plus employees. The budget is enormous. I forget the number now, but it's huge. It's, you know, half the state.
And
half
by the way, I
state.
forgot to throw in, they have to deal with lessened money now too from a
Yeah,
legislature.
so just administratively in terms of now they don't have. We have to be clear. They don't have enormous. They're the policy. They're supposed to be the policy body, but they don't have sort of unchecked authority. You know, the legislature still has a lot of control over what they can do, what their purview is. But I think it's a great place for people to start. There's some young people running this time. At the same time, you're stepping into being a policymaker, a governing board member of a system of 90,000 plus kids, you know, 20,000 employees. I guess the number's lower, and a massive budget. So I hope that we don't just think like, hey, run for this and give it a try, see how it goes, and we start thinking about how do we start preparing people for this. You know, this is not a small school district. With all due respect to them, you know, but this is a major
One of the things we lead the
corporation.
country, and it's one of the, like
right.
Eric said, it's one of the largest school boards in the country. I mean, it's-
Yes,
That's
30.
right. To you.
But you know, to be a school board member, with all respect for what they have to do, if you've never seen their board packets, they're about this big every single time that they meet, because they are supposed to be the policy board. But I do think some people believe that some of the policies have been incorrect, and how we have managed our money has not been terrific. And there is a lot of work to be done here, not the least of which is pay bands at APS, which actually get in the way of hiring the right people. And I actually am a great fan of Raquel Reedy. I think she is going to be a superb superintendent. I think you should give her a chance. But she also needs a board that is willing and has enough background to ask the hard questions. That is what a board is for.
These new folks coming on are going to have to make pretty tough decisions immediately that they won't see the ramifications for a long time.
Right.
You know, whether it's the band, the pay bands, hiring people, you're going to have to deal with that now, and you're not going to see the ramifications for a few years.
right.
If it's breaking up the school district, I mean, there's a ton of issues that they're going to have to look at APS that you're going to ask fairly newly elected folks involved to make massive decisions that at the end, it may take 4, 5, 6 years to see if they were right or wrong on that decision. And that kind of could create some consternation with a newly elected person.
Interesting, though. Are we in a place, Sophie, we're just about up against it here, but recall when Martin Chavez back when wanted to assume control of a lot of these school decisions, and the community basically pushed back and said, no way. Are we getting to that point at some point here? Take
not
away the
hearing
current
anything
mayor,
suggesting
no,
mayors,
but down
yeah.
the road, you know, right?
No,
Not a bad idea, not a good idea?
I
Yeah.
think that there's still so much tension between the local districts across the state and the public education department that is still the battle that's being fought right now.
Okay.
And contemplating more control in the hands of other locally elected. I just think that that's further down the road if that comes back up again. Yeah.
Interesting point.